Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And recently, this channel hit 20,000 subscribers, so I've decided to do something a little special to celebrate the occasion. This video is kind of going to be a sequel to what I did way back when I hit 10,000 subscribers, where I made retrospective album of the year lists for all the years in the 2010s decade that I had not already made year-end list videos for at that point. So now for this milestone, I decided to do the same thing again for my personal favorite decade of electronic music, the 1990s. So many styles and scenes we now take for granted got their start in the 90s, and there have been so many boatloads of absolute classics and all-time favorite albums that came out in the 90s. So many of my favorite bands were most active and relevant in the 90s. I think there's more personal all-time favorite albums from this decade than any other decade. This era of electronic music has always been this channel's primary bread and butter, so we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of great stuff that came out within these years. It is worth noting that none of these lists out to be taken all that seriously, as you might be able to tell from the fact that I have recorded this with my phone, and I will be spending the vast majority of this video just going completely unscripted. I did not exactly put a lot of thought into these lists. I pretty much just loosely browsed through some lists on twagima.com and albumoftheyear.org over the course of 2 days to remind myself of what released in what year, and just threw these lists together mostly by memory without even having re-listened to the vast majority of them to actually confirm anything. And it's obviously also worth noting that as many classics from this decade I know well, I have not listened to every major well-acclaimed electronic release that's ever come out through the 90s. Even if you think it's really obvious, that doesn't mean I've gotten to it. I am just one guy with only so much spare time. But hey, if you want to scream at me about stuff that's missing from these lists, feel free to go off in the comments. I'll still be mentioning some other albums, if I think they're really obvious and I just haven't listened to them, then I'll still mention them and just say that I haven't listened to them. I am still about to drop over 200 recommendations on you, a lot of which I think, if you've been following this channel for long enough, you should already know well. Oh yeah, and of course, any rankings are just based on my own personal enjoyment, so it's all just opinion and you can feel free to disagree with it. I may be shouting out albums you don't like or leave off albums that you love, but it is my video, so you will just have to deal with it. I am just doing this for a bit of low-stakes fun as someone who lives and breathes 90s electronic music, so yeah, let's just get into it. Alright, so we're starting off with 1990, which isn't really the 90s yet in spirit. 1990 is still kind of the 80s in spirit. I could not do a video of this particular style for the 70s or 80s because I don't really feel like there's enough to pick from within any given year through the 70s and 80s. I could come up with one album of the year for those decades, but I wouldn't be able to come up with a whole top 10 what I'm gonna be doing for most of this video. I couldn't even come up with a top 10 for 1990 either. I came up with 8. I came up with a top 8. There's probably enough for a top 10, but not enough that I've actually listened to. Some noticeable exclusions that I will have to leave off just because I haven't listened to them. I have not listened to anything by the band The Shaman. They put out an album this year called Intact. I really need to get around to sitting through their catalog because they were pretty active and well acclaimed in the 90s. I know they're mostly known for the one novelty single, the A's are good, that one. But they did have a pretty big actual album catalog that's taken seriously. And I first came across them because Orbital remixed them once, so yeah, I will have to get around to hearing their stuff, but I have not yet as of recording this video, so yeah, The Shaman. I also have not listened to the Skinny Puppy back catalog. They put out an album this year called Too Dark Park, which is widely considered to be just an absolute classic, one of the greatest of all time and stuff for people who are really into industrial music. I have sampled through this album since someone, gave me the option to, as a Patreon request once. I have a strong feeling from the bits I have heard of that album that it is probably not going to be my thing very much, just based off of my personal taste. However, it is considered a classic anyway, so I guess I can shout that out too. So, as for the 8 albums that I like from 1990, at number 8, I put A Guy Called Gerald Automatic. Not really one of his better albums, but that's what I had to pick from. It is still a good album, but, you know, kind of a filler pick, I suppose. Number 7, I put Meat Beat Manifesto, 99%. Number 6, I put Enigma, MCMXCAD. Been a long time since I've heard either of those two, so I don't really have those strong feelings pinned down, but I remember quite liking both of them. Number 5, I have Jimmy Cauty's self-titled Space album. Number 4, almost completely forgot about this one. I have Cabaret Voltaire, Groovy, Laid Back, and Nasty. That one is really underrated. Number 3, I'm gonna put D-Light, World Click. Number 2, I gotta put, Depeche Mode, Violator. Again, like, this is still the 80s in spirit. I almost never think of Depeche Mode's Violator as, like, a 90s album, even though it technically is. And number 1 is, the KLF, Chill Out. I did not have to think very hard about that one. That is the best one for me by a significant margin. So, there you go. Editing Tommy here. I somehow forgot Jean-Michel Jarre's Waiting for Cousteau came out in 1990. So yeah, that's on the list. I think I would it's around the same place as the Jimmy Cauty one. Call it number 4.5. It's above the Jimmy Cauty one, but below the Cabaret Voltaire. Alright, next up we can talk about 1991. Okay, so now we're starting to get a lot more of the usual names that are like all my big favorites and stuff. Now, I will say I only just barely managed to scrape together a top 10 for 1991. There was plenty more to choose from, although, like, albums that I love, there wasn't that many. Like, there's a lot of albums from artists where, like, they're putting out albums that are, you know, good, but maybe not necessarily, like, one of my favorites from them. See, Nightmares on Wax, A Word of Science, Cabaret Voltaire, Body and Soul, Coil, Love, Secret Domain, Plaid, Mbuki and Vuki, Yellow, Baby. All good albums. Probably would not be, like, major contenders on, like, lists for other years, I guess. There also was Kraftwerk The Mix. I briefly considered putting that on the list, since I do really like that, but that's just Kraftwerk, like, remaking their old songs, so I felt like that didn't really count. There's also the KLF's White Room. A lot of people love that album and consider that to be, like, an all-time favorite. I do not. I don't really like that album too much, I'm gonna be honest. But, you know, I guess that can get a shout. And as for stuff I have never listened to before, I suppose we got Recoil, Bloodline. I have not listened to anything by Recoil. That's the solo project of Alan Wilder from Depeche Mode. He put out an album in 1991. That had Moby on it, actually. I'll have to get around to hearing his stuff. Front 242, the industrial band, they put out an album this year called Tyranny for You. No idea whether that's one of their better ones, but, you know, that's a band I'll have to look into at some point. And Frankie Knuckles put out an album this year called Beyond the Mix. He, like, never put out albums while he was alive. He's, like, mostly, he did, like, DJ stuff. And this album is typically not, like, I've seen a lot of mixed reviews for this album, but, you know, Frankie Knuckles, like, the godfather of house, so, yeah, I feel like he kind of has to get a mention here. So yeah, can't confirm any of those. So here's what I chose for my actual top 10 favorites for 1991. At number 10, I put Erasure, Chorus. At number 9, I put Muslim Gauze, United States of Islam. I've been getting into Muslim Gauze a little bit more recently. Like, I've listened to 4 other albums since the one time I made a video on him, like, I don't know how many years ago. It's crazy to think that like a guy in like an ambient dub artist in the 90s made his entire identity Free Palestine. The guy was extremely ahead of his time, we'll say that. This particular one, it's a very good album. Like, it's just a lot of hypnotic loops of tribal percussion and stuff, so there you go. He'll be popping up a couple more times on this list. He has some better stuff in the same vein. So, number 8, I put LFO Frequencies. I have not listened to this album in many, many years. Probably haven't listened to it since, like, college or something, but once again, widely considered a classic. I remember really liking it when I did hear it, and the track actually called LFO is gonna be forever burned into my mind, so that's an all-time classic track there, at least. And kind of similar deal with my number 7 pick, Massive Attack, Blue Lines. I have gone on record as, like, not being a huge Massive Attack fan. I've said that before. Though, I think it's more accurate to say, like, I like Massive Attack. I've liked what I've heard from them. But I don't... I've always seen them, like, talked about with, like, so much hype and reverence. And, like, I'm supposed to get some kind of, like, life-changing, greatest of all time type experience from their music. And that's never really happened for me. I've never quite gotten them to click on the level that everyone says that they should for me. And we'll be seeing that more for their other albums in the 90s. Blue Lines, however, is the album of theirs that I've struggled with the least. I have listened to this one a couple of times, and I can definitively say I do actually think this is a very solid album. It is mostly carried by the track Unfinished Sympathy, which is absolutely fucking next level, but the rest of the album it's all very good. It's genre defining for trip hop and stuff, so that's a classic there. Getting back to the list, number 6, I put Biosphere, Microgravity. We know that one. Number 5, I put Primal Scream, Screamadelica. Number 4, I put Orbital, the Green Album, obviously. Number 3, I put Future Sound of London, Accelerator. Number 2, I put 808 State, XL. And number 1, I put The Orb's Adventures Beyond the Ultra World. Really got some absolutely massive all-timers with the top 3 here, so yeah. There you go, that's 1991. Okay, 1992 is next, and, okay, this was another, like, I got a top 10 together, but there really was not that many to choose from in 1992. I did kind of struggle to come up with, like, there's not, like, a big list of honorable mentions. I only came up with 4 honorable mentions. The last cut I made from this list was Frontline Assembly, Tactical Neural Implant. I come back to that one occasionally, and I do enjoy it every time, but I don't really come back to that one too much. There's other stuff that, like, just resonates more with my taste, I guess. I gotta shout out Brian Eno. I think he put out 2 really underrated albums in this year called, he had one called NerveNet, and he had one called The Shutov Assembly. Not really considered among, like, his, like, absolute best classics or anything, but I think there's some interesting stuff there that is worth coming back to. Been a long time since I've heard either of these, but I remember really liking both of them. And I guess I can also give a shout to, I don't know, Sven Väth and Accident in Paradise, since that's considered to be, like, one of the very first trance albums. Is like really early progressive house kind of stuff. So it's important for the genre, even if I seem to recall the album itself being a little all over the place, but, you know, an enjoyable time nonetheless. So, yeah, that was all the honorable mentions I could come up with in 1992. But as for the list proper, so number 10, I put Coil, Stolen and Contaminated Songs. It's the B-sides from Love Secret Domain, but I do think the B-sides are actually better than the stuff from Love Secret Domain. Love Secret Domains, that's a good album, but it's kind of long-winded and samey. Stolen Contaminated Songs has a lot more like actual variety. I remember messing with that one quite a bit more. Number 9, I put Silence, self-titled. That's Pete Namlook and Dr. Atmo, I believe. Been a minute since I've listened to this one, but it's Pete Namlook. It's one of his most hyped up albums. It's hard to go wrong with that guy. Number 8, I have Muslim Gauze with Zul. I don't know how you. Out of the stuff I've heard, it is between this one and a different one that he put out the next year that I think is my favorite work I've heard from Muslim Gauze. Number 7, I have a guy called Gerald, 28 Gun Bad Boy. Number 6, I have Opus 3, Mind Fruit. That one's really underrated. Orbital sampled it when they made Halcyon. And there's also a cover of I Talk to the Wind by King Crimson. Kirsty Hawkshaw singing a King Crimson song, and it's like a 90s dance tune. That's awesome. So yeah, the Opus 3 album is excellent. So number 5, I got Me Pete Manifesto, Satyricon. I think that's my favorite of their albums. And then you got some obvious ones. Number 4, I got The Orb, UF Orb. Number 3, I got The Prodigy, Experience. Number 2, maybe a little bit of a surprising pick. I decided to put Underground Resistance, Revolution for Change. This one is aged really dang well. The 2, 3, and 4 are like all really close, admittedly. Like which one I prefer is going to be like just dependent on my mood, but that one is excellent. I only recently discovered that one like last year or something like that. But yeah, that one stuck with me. But so the number 1 is really obvious. That's Aphex Twin, 8592. Because of course it is. There we go. That's my list for 1992. Next up, here's my list for 1993. Okay, so we're getting more to pick from. I think I got more to like that I felt like were viable, like actually viable picks for like a year-end list type of thing, for 1993 than they were for any of the previous 3 years. So as for honorable mentions, I can shout out The Amorphous Androgynous, Tales of Ephedrina. I can shout out Speedy J, Ginger. I can shout out Juno Reactor, Transmissions. That's an album that's mainly carried by like a really great opening track, High Energy Protons, and the rest of the album just kind of sounds like the first track, like just variations of the same thing, but you know, there's a classic, like, early Goa trance type thing. So, I remember really listening to that one a lot in high school, so that's got some good memories attached to it. I guess I can also throw in William Orbit, Strange Cargo 3, because that does have Water from a Vine Leaf on it, so, yeah. And the rest of that album is really good, even if, like, there's better in that particular ambient dub scene, but that is a very good album, a very consistent album except for the one track, which just totally outclasses everything. So as for some stuff I have not heard yet, I have not heard anything by the Higher Intelligence Agency yet. They had an album this year called Colorform. I have not heard The Sabers of Paradise, Sabersonic. I know their stuff just got like some pretty major reissues from Warp Records. It's like a group with like Andrew Weatherall in it. He's the guy who produced Primal Scream, Screamadelica, and he's been attached to a lot of stuff that's like pretty well acclaimed like this album, but I haven't heard this album, so I can't confirm. And also this year we got Model 500 Classics, which I've heard like parts of, but I haven't listened to the whole thing. And some early like Detroit techno, Detroit electro type thing that's like Juan Atkins' side project. I think he does that with, I don't know if it's like I don't think it's Juan Atkins solo. I think he's working with some other people. I didn't look this up. But yeah, there's some, I guess, honorable mentions. So here's the top 10 that I ended up landing on. So number 10, I ended up going with Fuse, Dimension Intrusion. Gave it to Richie Houghton. I'm not gonna have too much like from like his Plastic Man stuff. aside from one other that you'll see later. But this one, I remember really liking this one because it had more like actual variety than most of his Plastic Man albums. Like I could tell the tracks apart a lot better, where most Plastic Man albums just kind of run together for me. So yeah, I'll give it to that one. For number 9, I ended up going with Muslim Gauze, Vote Hezbollah. It's gonna be the last Muslim Gauze mentioned here. I haven't heard like other stuff he's done later in the 90s. I did also like the album he put out this same year called Hamas Arc. I have some pretty charged titles, I know, but I'm hoping that doesn't get me demonetized and stuff, but you know. Number 8, I have Seafield, Keek. That one has grown on me quite a bit since I've done my video on it. That one stuck with me. Number 7, I have Pete Namlook's self-titled Air album. Number 6, I gotta go with Björk with Debut. I still love that one, obviously. The number 5, I have to go with the nostalgia pick and go with 808 State, Gorgeous. I know it's not really one of people's favorite 808 State albums, but God, there's just so many of my favorite tracks from them, like 10 x 10 and Plan 9. And I really love that album. I don't care what anyone says. Number 4, I gotta go with Music with Tango Invective. Number 3, I'm going with Vangelis, Blade Runner soundtrack. Yeah, Blade Runner did not come out in 1993, but his soundtrack album did. At least the version of the soundtrack that like most people are like most familiar with, the one that like actually became famous, the CD version, the best version. And then for number 2, I'm gonna go with Audiker, Incunabula, and number 1 is obviously gonna be Orbital's Brown Album, because of course it is. Okay, next up, here's my list for 1994. Alright, this is where like we really start, the classics really start piling in. We got just a whole bunch of stuff to pick from. The honorable mentions list start getting bigger and bigger. For instance, what need to be set aside as an honorable mention, Audiker, Amber. I know I have already gone on record as that not being like one of my hugest favorites. Like I know most people prefer this over Incunabula. I know that, so obviously it's got to at least be mentioned here. Also got to give a shout out to Mouse on Mars' debut album, Vulvaland. That was a thing that came out this year. I also got to give a shout out to Woob, Woob 1194. That's some really good like ambient dub stuff. Still need to listen to like the rest of the like EMT catalog. I've only heard this one and the Gas one that I did the video on earlier this year. Beyond that, there's a couple here I can shout out that I think get like a bad rep that they don't deserve. I really like Yellow Zebra. I remember really messing with that one when I went through their catalog years ago, because that's them like doing a whole bunch of like 90s sounds, and like it would fit really well for them. And I also want to give a shout out to Sven Väth's The Harlequin, the Robot, and the Ballet Dancer. Even though this one like does not get, neither this or the yellow one get very high reviews, and this one almost certainly because of the album cover that people just thought was ugly as shit. But this album is actually really good if you do listen to it as like some early trance and progressive house type stuff. So that I remember really liking that one when I got around to sitting with that one. So yeah, those two are really underrated, I would say. For some other mentions, I guess I guess there's Portishead Dummy. That's a really obvious one. I will say that's an album that I only like and don't love. And I also have not listened to the other two Portishead albums. I haven't listened to their self-titled or third yet. But Dummy is obviously considered like one of the greatest of all time, so it kind of just has to be mentioned here by default. And I get the appeal of it. I do think that's a good album. And on a similar note, Massive Attack Protection. That's a good album too. I like those about the same amount, I would say. This year we also got For Hero, Parallel Universe. That one's often credited as like the first drum and bass album, so I feel like that one's worth giving a mention. That's a fun listen, although it's been many years since I've put it on. And I guess I'll give a shout to Oval Systemish. That's a good one. And as for stuff that I have not heard, I have not heard Robert Hood's Internal Empire. Robert Hood was one of the co-founders of Underground Resistance. So I know this is like, has a lot of hype behind it, although, again, I've not listened to it. And Richard H. Kirk also put out a pretty well-acclaimed album this year called Virtual State. I have not heard any of Richard H. Kirk's solo stuff outside of the stuff he did with Cabaret Voltaire. So, yeah, I guess those can get shouts, although I can't confirm the quality of those yet. So here is what I decided upon for the actual list. For number 10, I put Underworld, Dub No Bass with My Headman. There are Underworld albums that mean more to me than that one, but that is obviously, like, their big classic, their functional debut, even though they technically had 2 albums before that, but nobody cares about those. Number 9, I put Banco de Gaia, Maya. I think that's a really great one. Number 8, I put Cabaret Voltaire, The Conversation. That was their last album before, like, just going on hiatus for forever until making a comeback a couple of years ago, and then Richard H. Kirk unfortunately passed away. So, yeah, Conversation. It's just plain like classic 90s ambient techno, but it is really, really good. Classic 90s ambient techno. Number 7, I'm gonna go with The Prodigy, Music for the Jilted Generation, because of course. Number 6, I gotta go with Global Communication, 7614. I love that one. Got a whole bunch of, like, really big all-timers here. For number 5, I put The Black Dog, Spanners. I love that one. And above that, for number 4, I put Music, Bluff Limbo. That's his best album, and I absolutely love that one, as we know. And number 3, I put Orbital with Snivelization, because of course I did. And at number 2, I have Aphex Twin Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, just all-time ambient classics. And of course, at number 1, I have The Future Sound of London with Lifeforms. I think that's a pretty obvious pick given my usual taste, so there you go. And that's 1994. That is one absolutely freaking stacked year, and it only gets more stacked from there. Alright, next we got 1995. That's the year I was born. Yeah, this is like, now we're getting like into the mid-later 90s. That now the like honorable mention lists start to get like really ridiculously long. You'll see like a whole, there's just so many stuff to mention. Like in 1995 we got Kenny Shi, Jelly Tones. We got Moby, Everything Is Wrong. We got Erasure Self-Titled. We got Fila Brasilia, Maim That Tune. We got Wagon Christ, Throbbing Pouch. Got our first Luke Vibert mention. There's probably not going to be as many Luke Vibert mentions as you would hope, but there's some, and that's one of them. This year we also got BT's debut with Ema. You know, not really one of my favorites of his, but yeah, that's mostly considered a classic. We got Electroids, Electro World. I really liked that one when I listened to that one for the big Drexy Odds and Ends video I did earlier this year. And that one's not like, that's not everyone's favorite, but I had a really fun time with that one. That's a really solid thing. This year we also got Hallucinogen, Twisted. Got some classic old school, like, early trance type stuff. We got Elf versus Coil, Worship the Glitch. We also got Left Field's Leftism. I know I've gone on record saying that I'm not as big a fan of that as most people are, but, you know, it's still a really good album. Still a classic. And speaking of albums that, like, I guess I kind of just have to mention, like, even though they're not really my favorites from their respective artists, I kind of have to mention Björk's Post. I kind of have to mention the Chemical Brothers' Exit Planet Dust. Not really my favorite Björk or Chemical Brothers albums, but they will be major favorites for lots of other people, so I kind of have to mention those. And as for stuff I have not heard yet, I have not heard any Carl Craig stuff. He had an album this year called Land Cruising that I think is pretty well acclaimed. We got an album from System 7 called Power of 7 that I think that's considered to be like one of their best. They've done a lot of collabs with The Orb and stuff. So I haven't listened to any of their stuff. I haven't listened to anything by System 7. Except for the thing that they came out with, like, I think called Mirror System, like, just, like, last year or something. That was a pretty good album, but I haven't heard any of their old stuff. I have not heard anything by CJ Bolland. He has a pretty well-acclaimed album from this year called Electronic Highway, although I will be remedying this in the semi-near future. But yeah, there we go. So now, as for the stuff from 1995 that actually does, like, my actual top 10 of 1995. At number 10, I have Speedy J, G-Spot. That one grew on me a lot the most recent time I put that on, so I gotta shout that out. Number 9, I gotta mention Tricky, Max and Quay. As much as I've struggled with, like, the big classic trip-hop stuff a lot of the time, Max and Quay was, like, the one that, like, I got it immediately, and, like, that was the one where, like, I actually lived up to the hype that other people were giving it. So I do have a major soft spot for Max and Quay. I do love that album. Still have not heard any other Tricky albums yet besides that one, but, you know. And number 8, of course, I gotta have A Guy Called Gerald with Black Secret Technology. That is a major classic, and we've only got bigger classics from here, like number 7, Oudeker, Try Repeat. Number 6, I have to go with Goldie, Timeless. You got weird mixed feelings with like Goldie as like an actual person. He always did seem like a bit of an asshole. I once sent the guy a positive review of like his Journeyman album in 2017, and then he blocked me because I'm American. Then like fuck you're. So yeah, he's a dick, but. Timeless is still a great album, and I still love that album. Number 5, I gotta go with Oval 94 Discount. Yeah, and then, number 4, I'm gonna go with Sounds from the Ground, Kin. Technically, the version with this album cover came out in 1996, but, the first pressing of it was in 1995, so I'm counting it as a 1995 album. And then number 3, we got The Orb again with Orbis Terrarum. Number 2, I'm gonna put Banco de Gaia with Last Train to Lhasa. And number 1... this was kind of difficult to decide, but I ended up going with Nightmares on Wax, Smoker's Delight. So there we go, that's 1995. Alright, next up we got 1996. Yeah, so I think this year is going to be one that I think people will have been looking forward to, because there are 2 albums that came out this year that I scored a perfect 10 out of 10 on my channel. So that is excellent. There's not quite as massive a list of honorable mentions as 95, and especially not the next year, oh my god, but we'll get to that later. So 1996, some honorable mentions that it gave us was... the very last cut I made from the list was Aphex Twin with the Richard D. James album. I think that's number 11. Could be number 10 based on my mood, but yeah, that one just missed the cut. This year also gave us Fila Brasilia, Black Market Gardening. That's one of my, it's one of their best albums, I feel like. This year gave us Meat Beat Manifesto, Subliminal Sandwich. This year also gave us LFO, Advance. I seem to recall liking that album more than Frequencies, although again, it has been many, many years. I don't actually remember that well. I remember having a good time with Larry Heard's Alien. I remember really liking that one. And I guess I can give some shout-outs to B12 Time Tourist. That's a pretty good album. Mainly, I just really like the album cover. The album is, like, pretty standard as far as, like, ambient techno. And Electrosoma, their debut, did not get a mention. I'm not really a huge B12 fan. Some people just play the sound like really straight and don't actually do that much interesting with it, and B12 were kind of an example of that for me. Although, you know, Electrosoma, that's a pretty decent album at worst. And Time Tourist is better. Time Tourist has a little bit more like energy to it and a little more texture and stuff. And I guess I can also give a shout out to Cujo's Adventures in Foam. Not exactly like a masterpiece either, as I just recently reviewed that one, but yeah, that's a good album, so I guess I can throw in a mention for that. Editing Tommy back again. I forgot The Black Dog, music for adverts and short films. That's a really good album. I thought that was worth mentioning. As for albums I have not heard yet, I have not heard Puerto Ric's Biokinetics. I've heard a lot of good things about that one. A lot of people have also recommended me to check out Psylob. He put an album out called Psylobian Sunset this year. And I also really want to check out Jamiroquai at some point. They put out their album Traveling Without Moving in this year. Sorry about my laptop fan. I know that's like my phone's right next to the laptop. I get the feeling like Jamiroquai are probably going to be one of those bands that are like barely within my formats. Like they're closer to like pop and funk and like they're often called acid jazz, but I feel like they could be like just barely electronic enough, and like their impact on the genre is like substantial enough where they could fit within my format anyway. So I do want to check out their stuff. I only know 2 songs by Jamiroquai. I know Virtual Insanity, and I know Canned Heat because of Napoleon Dynamite. And Canned Heat is one of the greatest things ever made, so at some point I'm gonna need to check these guys out more in depth. Okay, so the main top 10. At number 10, I ended up going with Mike and Rich, Expert Knob Twiddlers. It is close between this and Richard D. James' album again, but I ended up going with Mike and Rich. This felt spicy today, I guess. Number 9, I ended up going with The Future Sound of London with Dead Cities. Number 8, I gotta go with DJ Spooky, Songs of a Dead Dreamer. Don't really get, like, much opportunity to bring this one up. I've not heard any other DJ Spooky albums aside from this one, but I come back to this one all the time. That's a big favorite. Number 7, I'm gonna put down Stereolab, Emperor Tomato Ketchup. Another band that's like right on the fringe of like where I draw my boundaries, but you know, they count. I've considered them to count as electronic, so there you go. And then we just get a whole bunch of obvious ones. We get, number 6, I got Underworld, Second Toughest in the Infants. Number 5, I got Square Pusher, Feed Me Weird Things. Number 4, I gotta go with DJ Shadow, Introducing. And for the top 3, like, really, really big, like, personal ones for me. At number 3, I got Robert Miles, Dreamland. And, of course, at number 2, 808 State Down Solaris. And number 1, Orbital Insides. You already knew that was how the end of that list was going to go, I would assume. Okay, now this is the really big one. Next we got 1997. Out of all the years in the 90s, by sheer quantity, this is easily the most stacked. There are so freaking many albums from 1997 that I thought were worth a mention. I somehow did not have room for Monolake, Hong Kong. I didn't have room for Jean-Michel Jarre, Oxygen 713, Fluke, Risotto, Juno Reactor, Bible of Dreams. That's one of their best ones. I think that's my second favorite Juno Reactor album behind Shango. The Shango's 2000s. Metamatic's made his debut with a Metamatic's production. Mouse on Mars put out, I think, their best album with Autodetector. We got Drexcia, The Quest. It's a compilation of stuff they released throughout the previous several years, but still, like, that's a thing that came out this year. We got Way Out West self-titled. That's an album I really love. We got The Prodigy, The Fat of the Land. Of course, you gotta mention that one. And for some slightly more underrated picks, you got Phase Action, Plans and Designs. Not really an act that you're gonna see many people talking about, but this is an album I come back to like, just like as a personal comfort listen for like all the time. It's just like this nice like spacey disco type record that I have a lot of fun with. Production's not amazing, but I've just listened to it so many times, just like as something to like ease my mind. Also got to shout out Gas, Zauberberg. This is gonna be the only Gas mention in the video, because the other 2 albums he released in the 90s, his self-titled and Königsforst, are not really among my favorites of his, but Zauberberg is one of my favorites of his. Also got to give a shout-out to Pete Namlick and Klaus Schultz, Dark Side of the Moog 6. That's my personal favorite volume of the Dark Side of the Moog series. Shout-out to number 4 as well, that came out, I think, the previous year. I got to give a shout-out to Safi Brothers with Mystic Cigarettes. I gotta give a shout out to iCube Picnic Attack. Gotta give an obvious shout to The Orb or Oblivion. That album's great. I'll give a shout to Depeche Mode's Ultra. I think that album's kind of underrated. I had It's No Good like running through my head like most of yesterday, so that was fun. I remember really liking Frontline Assembly, Flavor of the Week. I remember that album being quite good. Like, that's them. Industrial band doing like a 90s techno type thing. Kind of similar deal with Yellow Pocket Universe. That's pretty different by Yellow albums. That's them trying to do like a more traditional trance and techno type thing compared to like their usual quirky shtick and stuff. But I remember this being a good time. You cannot go wrong with a Yellow album. All of their albums are good. And I guess I can also give a shout to Danky Groove with A, since I had a lot of fun with that when I did the Patreon request for that. I guess I am like legally obligated to mention Daft Punk's Homework, because like that is just such a toweringly important record for the entire genre. Although that's not really on my list. I stand by all the things that I've said about it in the past. It's an album that I respect. I have a lot of respect for it, but gosh, does it get a little monotonous in the last like third or so. So yeah, not nearly as hot on that one as everyone else. I am very much a Discovery person over Homework. Also, I've gotten tons of people who like told me they just hate Discovery and think Homework is the real classic, so there you go. Also, if I had done this video like 2 or 3 years ago, I might have given a shout out to Astral Projection Dancing Galaxy. However, I will not be giving them a shout here. They did used to be a kind of an inspiration of mine. I thought they made some like really good trance music, but they are also like extremely openly Israeli. Like, they just wear the fact that they are from Israel on their sleeves. And I also recently found out they did an entire concert exclusively for IDF soldiers. So that is fucking gross. I cannot support an act that like is clearly defending genocide. So yeah, fuck that. Those guys are dead to me as far as I'm concerned. On a somewhat lighter note, some stuff that I have not listened to yet. I have not listened to Derek May's Innovator. I know this is like a big like singles compilation, but you know, Derek May's like one of the big Detroit techno legends. So I feel like I gotta hear that one at some point. I've also heard good things about Bentley Rhythm Ace self-titled. Haven't heard that one, can't confirm, but you know, I think Deep Cuts shouted it out once. I've not heard Photech, Modus Operandi, or any of his other albums. I have not heard Junkie XL, Saturday Teenage Kick. And I've also heard good things about Christophe de Babylon. If you're into it, I'm out of it. Again, cannot confirm the quality of any of these. They just seem like the kind of thing that I would probably be into. So, oh my god, that was an absolute ton. So yeah, with how absolutely stacked this is, obviously every single one of these 1997 albums is like just totally an all-timer territory. These are all just absolutely phenomenal records. So number 10, I have Robert Miles, 23 AM. At number 9, I have The Crystal Method, Vegas. At number 8, I have Stereolab, Dots and Loops. At number 7, I put Plaid, Not for Threes. At number 6, I put Björk, Homogenic. That's how you know how good this year was. Björk's fucking Homogenic, only at number 6. Number 5, I gotta put The Chemical Brothers, Dig Your Own Hole. Number 4, gotta go with a personal favorite. Gotta go with BT, ESCM. That's one of the BT albums that has held up the best and has grown on me the most, especially over the last couple of years. And number 3, I gotta go with Biosphere, Substrata. And number 2, I gotta go with Square Pusher, Hard Normal Daddy. And number 1, of course, I have to go with Air, Moon Safari. Also, shout out to Air Premier Symptomes, which also came out in 1997. That's technically an EP. Technically, whatever you count it as. That would be. I ended up not including it here, but that would be somewhere in like top 5 somewhere if I were counting it. Okay, we are in the home stretch here. So now we got 1998. And, okay, well, this one is back to a really significantly more limited set of albums to choose from again. Like the early 90s stuff was. Even the list itself is kind of pushing it for the top 10, but I did come up with, you know, a bunch of stuff that could be in contention for here. Like Faithless, Sunday 8 p.m., I obviously just did my video on Faithless, and that was my favorite of their albums, so that's a really good one. I also remember really liking Jega, Spectrum. It has been a minute, but yeah, I remember really liking that one. It's been an even longer time since I've heard Uncle, Science Fiction, but I seem to vaguely remember liking that one. I think I heard it like once in high school. But, you know, like DJ Shadow's like really heavily involved in that one. So, you know, it's hard to go wrong with anything he's a part of, I feel like. Even though a lot of people would like to tell you otherwise. No, his catalog's a lot more consistent than it's given credit for. I guess I can give a shout out to Mouse on Mars Glam, even though that's not really one of my favorites of theirs. It is a very good album, just, you know, not like one of my top favorites of theirs. I think the album they put out, like, after this one was better, and I ended up not including that on the list for 1999, so yeah, well, I was scraping for this one here. I guess I can also mention Propeller Heads, Decks and Drums and Rock and Roll, even though I think that album is only good and not great. It is very much a mixed bag, but there are some absolutely phenomenal heights. Your Take California, your On Your Majesty's Secret Service, and that kind of thing. And I guess I am all but obligated to mention Massive Attack's Mezzanine. I don't dislike this album, okay? Regardless of what I may have said in the past, I have enjoyed my time the couple of times I've listened to this album, but again, anytime I put it on, I was like, yeah, this is pretty good, and then it just kind of bounced off me and I didn't really remember it. However, I also have only listened to it like 3 times, and each of those 3 listens are like 5 years apart from each other. So I think it's just more accurate to say that I don't actually have an opinion formed on Mezzanine. I've listened to it a couple of times, but I don't really know how I feel about it. I think I got like one person say they were like interested in like Patreon requesting that one, and when I mentioned that I've struggled with that one in the past, they changed their mind, like, no, I only want you to review this if it's like unilaterally positive, which I kind of want to review that one so that I can like either get it to click with me or at least be able to pin my actual feelings down on it. But yeah, as of right now, it's there because it kind of has to be, because it's like just too toweringly important, like this classic trip hop, but I don't really have strong feelings on it at the moment. I guess I can also give some mentions to stuff that I have not listened to at all yet. I've heard a lot of good things about Bola, Soup. I've heard good things about Two Lone Swordsmen, Stay Down. That's another Andrew Weatherall related thing. And I've also heard good things about Pull. He put out his first album this year. The latter two might be remedying my lack of knowledge of those in the semi-near future. You may be hearing more about that. Now it's time for what made my actual list for 1998. At number 10, I put Spangle with Are You Spangled? Not really one of my favorite albums of theirs. They would get much better afterwards. Like, this doesn't really hold a candle to, like, Nothing Lasts But Nothing Is Lost, or Ineffable Mysteries from Spangleland, but this is a very good album. Spangle are just, like, a really cool band. I feel like I just got to shout out Spangle here. I also ended up going, for number 9, I ended up going with Oudiker LP5. So yeah, I know that I've gone on record saying that album is only good to me, and I don't absolutely love it. So the pickings were kind of slim for 1998, but you know, obviously a lot of people love that one way more than I do. So I feel like that's fair enough. I absolutely get the appeal of this one. I get exactly why so many people love it. And I am really close to loving it, to be clear. Number 8, I put down Wagon Christ, Tally Ho. That's probably my personal favorite of his stuff under that alias. And number 7, that might be a controversial pick, but I have to go with Goldie, Saturn's Return. A lot of people really hate this album, but I've always had a soft spot for it, even just in all its massively overstuffed 2.5-hour glory. There's just so much really cool stuff all through that, and there's a ton of variety, just so much epic shit in there, like putting aside the hour-long Mother tracks, there's fucking shit like Crystal Clear and Believe and Dragonfly especially. There's just some like the big bangers too. Like he got like Noel Gallagher and KRS-One on tracks. There's some. Saturn's Return's a good ass album, a great album even. I don't care what anyone says. Number 6, I'm gonna go with Plastic Man, Consumed. I think that's a pretty obvious one for those in the know. Number 5, I'm gonna go with Fatboy Slim, You've Come a Long Way, Baby. I still have yet to hear the other Fatboy Slim albums in their full entirety, but perhaps that's something else that may be remedied in the semi-near future. Who knows? I kind of doubt You've Come a Long Way, Baby is going to be unseated, though, because, oh my god, the nostalgia factor on that one is just, like, next level. That just really associate that with, like, my old YTP friends from back in the days. So, yeah. Number 4, I got Square Pusher, Music is Rotted One Note. Another semi-controversial one, depending on who you ask, but that's... Dude's just getting all his Miles Davis type shit, his music concrete, and like just experimental jazz shit. Dude is absolutely killing it on this one. But then we got a couple of really obvious ones. Number 3, I gotta go with Amon Tobin, Permutation. Obviously just reviewed that one very recently, so we know that one means something special to me. Number 2, got even more obvious one, Boards of Canada, Music Has the Right to Children, my favorite album of theirs. But number 1, maybe not one that is mentioned quite as much as Boards of Canada or Amon Tobin, but I had to go, for my number 1, I had to go with Metamatics, Neo Ouija. That is so much childhood nostalgia with that one. That's a very early favorite from when I was first getting into electronic music, and still absolutely holds up all the way through. That just makes me happy like no other album on the 1998 list can. So there you go with that. Alright, and finally we made it to the last one. The last list to do for the 90s. We've made it to 1999. And this is another really big one. There's another really, like, I think this is the second most stacked behind 97, just the most by sheer amount of honorable mentions that I couldn't include. This year gave us Drexia's Neptune's Lair. This year gave us Coil, Music to Play in the Dark. That's my favorite album of theirs. This year gave us Basement Jaxx, Remedy. They started this year. We got the Chemical Brothers, Surrender. There's other Chemical Brothers albums I prefer over that one, but like that is like some of their all-time best tracks, like Sunshine Underground and Hey Boy, Hey Girl, and Let Forever Be and stuff. So, you know. We also got Moby, Play. I do think 18 is better. Fight me. But Play is still a classic, whether you like it or not. Surgeon, Force and Form, that's probably my favorite of his albums. Just like really, really, really straightforward techno, but like it's also like 4 lengthy tracks that kind of like have some more progression to them. So I thought the structuring in that one was cool. So that's probably my favorite of his albums. Fortet made his debut this year. He put out Dialogue, and he also was still in the band Fridge at this point. They put out what I think is their best album, F, this year. It's kind of more like post-rock, I guess, but there's some electronic elements in that one. I think it counts enough. And also what I think just counts enough is also Stereolab. They put out another album that I think is very underrated. Cobra and Phase's group play Voltage in the Milky Night. The album is long as shit, but it... all the stuff in it is really good. There's so much interesting stuff to explore in that one. I can also give out another shout out to Yellow. They put out an album this year called Motion Picture. Yeah, I think, is this like the first one where they started like incorporating like some of the jazzier elements or something? I feel like Yellow is just going to be a safe pick no matter what though. Like, cause again, they do not have any like subpar albums. All of them are really good. Except for Toy. Toy is kind of subpar, but that's 2010s. Never mind that. ATB made his debut in 1999. He put out Movin' Melodies. Again, I think he would again get way better in the 2000s. Like, this does not hold a candle to Addicted to Music or No Silence or Future Memories, but it does have like all his like biggest signature hits like 9 p.m. Till I Come and Don't Stop. And the album, it does still hold up front to back, I feel like. It's still a very good album. I guess I can also give a shout out to Plaid with Rest Proof Clockwork. It's not as good as Not for Threes or Double Figure, but it's in comparable tier. And I feel like I can also give a shout out to Tangerine Dream with Mars Polaris. Tangerine Dream put out lots of albums in the 90s. Most of them are boring as shit, but this one was really good. This is the one 90s Tangerine Dream album that I think is actually worth hearing, so I will give them that one. Editing Tommy here one more time. Do you count 9 Inch Nails The Fragile as electronic? I think that's close enough, I guess. So I guess I can add that to the honorable mentions. I remember that album being really exhausting to get through, but I also remember having fun with it, so there you go. I can also mention, like, just what the two that were closest to making the list, but didn't. My functional number 12 pick is the Cinematic Orchestra Motion. That's, like, some excellent, like, early Ninja Tune jazz breaks, and it's just his movie soundtrack ready as it sounds, and that album's excellent. And my functional number 11 pick, I am dead serious when I say that Eiffel 65 Europop was almost on the list proper. This album, again, I don't care what anyone says, this is excellent. Every single track on that album is great. Blue Dabba-Dee is not even really like, that is one of my favorites, but it's not even my favorite. Like, I think Too Much Heaven is. Almost every track on there is, like, about on par with Blue Dabba-Dee. That is a absolutely phenomenal, like, electropop, Eurodance type record. Those guys were absolute next level at coming up with hooks. So I gotta shout out Eiffel 65. As much disrespect as they get, they deserve more actual respect. And as for some artists that I have not heard, a lot of people have recommended I check out Susumu Yokota. He put out an album called Sakura this year. I think some versions technically came out in 2000, but I think the first version of it came out in 1999, so I'll mention that here. I think this is his most popular album, though I could be wrong about that. R.I.P. to that guy, but yeah, I still need to actually listen to his catalog at some point. I also have not heard anything by Todd Edwards. He put out his debut album, Prima Edizione. I've heard a lot of good things about this one. The guy is partially responsible for the best Daft Punk track ever made, so even if like whatever he ends up doing solo ends up not living up to that, I feel like I have to check at least this one album out. I don't know about any of his other stuff. This is the one that most people bring up as being his best. So at some point, I will have to check out Todd Edwards. So, as for what I ended up going with for the list proper for 1999, at number 10, had to go with a nostalgia pick. Again, I ended up going with BT, Movement and Still Life. I've gone back and forth with this one more recently, you know, in the wake of BT being like a crypto bro and like me just getting a little burned out on his more commercial stuff like this. But the songs are still so good on this one. The last couple times I have come back to it, it has still held up all the way through, so I gotta shout out that one. Number 9, I'm gonna go with Music, Royal Astronomy. By the way, yeah, I didn't have Lunatic Harness on my list. That's a good album. I didn't need to mention that one. I feel like it's gonna be more on other people's lists than it is on mine. Much prefer this one, I'm gonna be honest. Number 8, also, like, kind of on the fringe of light. This was, like, right at the end of 1999, but technically still within the year, was Norkin Soul Static Bureau. The version with this album cover, again, is 2000, I believe. But first version of it was from 1999. I love Lee Norris, especially this era of him. Got pretty much copy-paste my feelings that I was saying about Metamatic's Neo Ouija. Just all the nostalgia. And number 7, I put The Orb Sidonia, another album that I feel gets a bad rep that it does not deserve at all. I think is way better than pretty much everyone gives it credit for. But going further up, we got some much more obvious ones. Number 6, we got Underworld Bocoup Fish. Gotta have that one. I think that's my favorite album of theirs at this point. Number 5, I'm gonna go with Kenny Shi, Sleeping Madness. It's my favorite of his albums. That's an absolute classic. Number 4, oh gosh, I love some of these so much. I love Monolake's Interstate. God, that's my favorite of his albums. And from there, number 3, of course, we got Orbital again. We got The Middle of Nowhere, which really says something about with the stuff that I ended up marking above Orbital, obviously. Which number 2 was Sounds from the Ground, Mosaic. That is... like, if you want to get into Sounds from the Ground, that's going to be the first place I would recommend. I think Luminal might be my favorite of their albums, but this is, like, the most, like, representative of what SFTG are, like, really all about, I feel like. So, that album's excellent. And, of course, number 1, I have a feeling people are going to see this one coming, but I have to go with Hybrid Wide Angle. I still use Finished Symphony for, like, the buffer music for every single one of my year-end lists. So we know that this one means something very special to me. And the channel is even partially named after it. It's where the angle from Wonky Angle comes from. So, yeah. There we go. That's my list for 1999. And that's also the end of this video. That's all the lists. Yeah, that was an absolute ton. My legs are killing me right now. I'm just freaking sitting cross-legged. Oh gosh, ow. Hope you've enjoyed me just dumping loads of loose recommendations. Obviously, do not hold me to any of the rankings that I've put on any of these lists. They could change depending on my mood. You just never know. I'm pretty confident in all my number 1 picks, but... yeah, we'll just go with that. Thanks again for 20,000 subscribers. Thanks for sticking with me for such a long time. And yeah, I think we'll just leave it at that. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. They're awesome people. You want to add yourself to that list, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.